Hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Brad. If you're new here, I'm excited for your interest. Today, it's going to be all about my turbo H22 Honda Prelude. Now, before we dive deep into this build, I would just like to ask you, what is it about this platform that inspired you? Maybe your neighbor owned one and you used to get to ride in it. Maybe you had taken a ride with one of your friends. Maybe you just seen them around town and had dreams of them. Could be that simple. For me, it's a little more complicated than that. It went all the way back to when I was 15 years old. To make a long story short, my best friend let me borrow his Prelude, and I went out and had my first experience with a girl with one. So, needless to say, I've been in love with the platform ever since. It's never failed me or let me down. So, with that being said, we're gonna move on straight into the meat and potatoes of this build. And what everybody would like to know, first off, I have a Precision 6062 Gen 2 ball bearing turbo on my H22. I cannot say enough about this turbocharger. It has far exceeded my every expectation. This thing is rated around 750 horsepower. Now, I've made over 800 on just boost alone plenty of times. That being said, I am probably getting close to being out of its efficiency range. For an example, this thing will make 30 pounds of boost before 4,000 RPM on the low cam lobe. That's quite a bit of fast spool. Now, on the big end, this thing does not give up. It takes somewhere around 33 to 35 pounds at 8,500 RPM to make over 800. As for the turbo manifold on my motor, it is a Sheepy bottom mount version 2. This thing, when it showed up, it looked like a piece of artwork. I cannot say enough about their craftsmanship. That being said, there's only one thing I can knock it about. They do use mild steel flanges, so I did have them coated with a ceramic coating, as I am one that does not want to spend a ton of money to see that part rust. And for those of you wondering, you could possibly fit the AC on the car with this manifold. There is room for the compressor, and the biggest issue becomes, where do you put the heat exchanger out front? So for those of you that were wondering, hopefully that answers your question. I was also able to keep the front stock motor mount. That was a big ticket item for me, as I have put solid mounts in this car, but I do retain all four. Moving on, it has a Turbo Smart 45 millimeter wastegate. It does a good job in controlling the boost. For the intercooler, it is a 3-inch precision core that I have modified into a single back door. There's a 3-inch outlet that converts into my AEM cold air intake. I'm using a Turbo Smart Pro V blow-off valve. It does a great job. I love the noise. I do have a 66 millimeter skunk tooth throttle body on this. The intake plenum has been port matched. I've ran all different kind of plenum spacers and thermal gaskets. There's nothing wrong with the stock Honda intake manifold. There's plenty of people out there that have made 1,000 horsepower on these units. It's just kind of a point of principle for me that I leave it on. The only time that I will take it off of the car is if I run out of injector. I've been trying to find out a way to put 8 injectors on the stock intake manifold. So if any of you know of a way that this can be done or machined, let me know. Now, as for the cylinder head, I have done a multi-angle valve job. It has been ported by yours truly. I have done the intake, the exhaust ports, also the combustion chamber. The top end of this is all skunked too. So I have their titanium retainers, their springs, and their pro valves. They are plus 1 millimeter on the intake and the exhaust side. If I had it to do over again, I would switch to the Ferrera. And the reason why is because they use a higher quality valve. If anything happens and the valve drops, it will bend instead of break. And when you're playing with this kind of power, if anything like that happens, you don't want your engine completely destroyed. Now I do have BC Stage 2 NA camshafts in this car. They are 470, 469 lift. I highly recommend them. They change the whole characteristics of the way the engine runs. They help the power to stay on until about 9,000 RPM. Now for the engine block, I've done a ton of modifications. First one I'm going to start with is I've had it sleeved with Darton MID wet sleeves. This was done by Darton East out in Winchester, Virginia. I also had them put a machine groove in the top of the cylinders for copper O-rings. I also have a KS Tune balance shaft delete kit. This helps to increase the oil flow to the rest of the engine by installing an oil gallery plug that used to feed them. You also start out with a brand new oil pump. This allowed me to go get the oil pump gears in the house and coated. I also have taken the crankshaft and the oil pump gears and have had them cryo treated. Moving on to the crankshaft, I have had some machine work done on it. I had it polished, I had it balanced, and I did have the old oil plug galleries drilled and retapped to put Allen keys in. So basically from the factory, Honda installed these BBs, and sometimes at high RPM they can fling out. Well, that's not good for the longevity of your engine. Also, the benefit to this is it makes it really easy to clean your crank when you're servicing it. So these are some, but not all of the modifications that I've done to this engine. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the transmission. I do have a WaveTrack LSD. It has done a really good job for me. Even though a lot of my videos are pretty poor examples of that, I hope you cut me some slack as it has been winter time. Hopefully in the spring, I'll be able to give you a lot better examples. Being a Type SH, it did come with the Type SH transmission and the ATTS unit. I had always heard that they were only good for 300 horsepower. So almost immediately, that was the first modification I did to this car. I did switch it over to the Prelude base model transmission. Luckily, they are the same gear ratios, so it really worked out. Now I have swapped the final drive in this transmission to a 4.062. This gives me about 14 extra mile an hour in the quarter mile. And for the biggest modification that I would say to the transmission is that I also had it cryo treated. I cannot say this enough. I also had the transmission cryo treated. I believe this is what's kept the transmission together. I have now ran 2 seasons on this same gear set. I know a lot of you out there are going to have a hard time believing that. For those of you that don't know, this is your 4th gear, or half of your 4th gear. If you see, they are not very tall. It is very hard for me to believe that this little bit of metal can take that kind of abuse. It's just a testament to Honda and the quality steel and their practices that they used with their heat treatment. And along with the cryo treating, I believe this has helped. But just know, I understand the day is coming. So nobody else more than me wants a dog box transmission for this car. We could go really, really far, and I think it would be really exciting to show you guys what the car can actually do with one of those in it. So this is some but not all of the major modifications I've done to the car. There's plenty other things that I would like to go over with, but in interest of keeping the video somewhat shorter, we're gonna have to save it for another day. If there's anything that I've left out that you would like covered, either leave a comment or leave me a message on Instagram. This is your boy Brad. If you've made it to the end of the video, I really appreciate you, man. Thank you.